No one remembers when the town was built. There are no records, no photographs, no official mention in regional archives. It does not appear in census data or transportation plans. Even maps that once included it seem to have quietly revised themselves over time, as if correcting an error that was never publicly acknowledged. Yet the town exists, not continuously, not reliably. It appears under specific conditions, none of which can be deliberately reproduced. The most consistent element is fog, not the kind that rolls in with weather systems or follows seasonal patterns, but fog that seems to arrive independently, without cause or warning. It settles slowly, without movement, and remains longer than it should. When it does, the town becomes possible. The road leading to it is ordinary. It cuts through open land with no notable features, no landmarks to mark progress. Travelers report nothing unusual until the fog begins to form, usually at a distance that feels too close for comfort. Visibility narrows, not abruptly but gradually enough that the change feels natural. The world simplifies. Peripheral details disappear first, leaving only what lies directly ahead. At some point, the sense of direction weakens. The road seems shorter than before. Distances lose consistency. Then, without any clear transition, the road is no longer the road. It becomes a street, narrower, uneven, flanked by structures that were not there moments earlier. There is no gate, no sign, no boundary. You do not arrive at the town. You find yourself already inside it. The architecture is restrained. Buildings are modest in scale, rarely exceeding 2 stories. Their shapes are functional, almost cautious, as if designed to avoid drawing attention. Walls are textured but worn smooth by time rather than damage. Nothing appears abandoned. Nothing appears actively maintained either. Doors are closed but not sealed. Windows are intact but uncurtained. Light glows faintly from some interiors, steady and colorless, offering no indication of movement or life. The streets curve gently, avoiding intersections that might suggest importance or hierarchy. There is no central square, no visible place of gathering. Everything feels evenly distributed, equal. There are objects. They appear casually placed as though set down and forgotten rather than deliberately arranged. A chair beside a doorway, a bicycle leaning against a wall, its tires neither flat nor new. A stack of crates with no markings to suggest origin or purpose. Inside the buildings, rooms contain signs of use. Tables hold cups that appear untouched, yet not newly placed. Shelves carry books with blank spines, their pages filled with text that resists immediate comprehension. The language resembles familiar scripts but never resolves into something fully readable. Beds look slept in but not recently. Clothes hang in closets, chosen without style or personalization. Everything suggests occupancy without occupants, use without users. Time feels suspended here, not stopped, but disengaged from consequence. Watches behave inconsistently. Phones lose signal, then lose relevance. Daylight does not brighten fully, nor does night arrive decisively. Instead, the town exists in a prolonged in-between state where shadows remain soft and contrasts never sharpen. There is no sunrise to anticipate, no sunset to mark closure. The concept of later becomes vague. Waiting does not produce impatience. Hunger fades rather than intensifies. Fatigue becomes optional. The body adjusts, as if recognizing that normal rhythms are unnecessary here. The town does not ask to be found. It does not advertise its existence. It appears briefly, quietly, and without justification. Those who pass through it do not return unchanged, but they rarely speak of it, not because they are forbidden, but because language feels inadequate. The town exists beyond explanation, unwritten, unmapped, and indifferent to whether it is remembered at all. Some visitors begin to notice changes only after they leave, not immediately. Days or weeks may pass before the first difference becomes apparent. It starts with sound. Ordinary environments feel louder than before, not sharper, not more aggressive, but unnecessarily present. Conversations overlap, machines hum, music insists on being noticed. Silence, once taken for granted, now feels rare, uncomfortable, as if something essential has been misplaced. Sleep changes. Dreams become longer, less narrative. Scenes repeat without progression. Fog appears often, though not always visually. Sometimes it manifests as an inability to recall details upon waking, a lingering vagueness that resists clarity. Some report dreaming of streets that curve without destination, rooms with light but no source, windows that look outward into nothing recognizable. Faces never appear, voices are absent, yet the dreams feel populated. Attempts to locate the town again usually fail. People return to the same road under similar conditions, hoping for repetition. They wait for fog, track weather patterns, revisit coordinates recorded during their first encounter. Nothing happens. The road remains a road. The land stays empty. Fog, when it arrives, behaves normally. It moves, it lifts, it disperses. The town does not return. It becomes increasingly difficult to determine whether it ever did. Some individuals attempt to reconstruct the town from memory. They draw maps. The maps never align. Street lengths vary. Building placements contradict one another. Even the number of streets cannot be agreed upon. When asked to describe the town verbally, people pause longer than expected. They struggle not with vocabulary, but with selection. There is too little emphasis. Nothing stands out. The town resists hierarchy. Every detail feels equally important and equally forgettable. A small number of accounts suggest that the town may not be fixed to a single location. These reports come from individuals who encountered similar environments in entirely different regions, different climates, different continents. The descriptions match not in detail but in structure. Fog that settles without reason, a gradual loss of distance, buildings that appear already familiar, the same absence of signs, the same soft light, the same neutrality. If these accounts are accurate, the town is not a place. It is a condition. This interpretation introduces uncomfortable questions. If the town is not bound to geography, what determines its appearance? Why some individuals and not others? Why only briefly? Why without invitation? No answers exist. The town does not provide explanations. It offers only experience. One recurring detail appears in multiple independent accounts. A room, not large, not small, usually encountered accidentally rather than sought out. A door opens onto it without warning. Inside, the room is undecorated. No furniture, no windows. The walls are unmarked. Light fills the space evenly, without visible source or shadow. Those who enter the room report an unusual sensation of stillness, not calm. Stillness. Movement feels unnecessary. Thought slows. Questions lose urgency. Time, if present, feels irrelevant. No one reports staying long, not because of discomfort, but because staying feels complete, as if remaining longer would add nothing. No one has encountered another person in the room. No one has encountered themselves. The room contains nothing. Yet those who enter it describe it as the most vivid part of the town, the hardest to forget. After leaving the town, many report a gradual erosion of certainty, not about facts, about importance. Tasks feel less critical, deadlines feel arbitrary, achievements lose some of their weight. This does not lead to apathy. Rather, it introduces distance, a space between reaction and response. Some find this unsettling. Others describe it as relief. A few individuals attempt to name the town. The names vary. None persist. Each attempt feels incorrect, as if naming the town would impose limits it does not accept. The town does not respond to being labeled. It does not resist. It simply ignores. The most persistent theory suggests that the town exists in moments of lowered narrative, moments when the mind releases the need for sequence, when cause and effect loosen, when experience is allowed to exist without interpretation. In this sense, the town may not be external at all. It may be accessible only when expectation dissolves, but even this explanation fails to account for consistency. Too many shared elements exist, too many alignments. Years later, some individuals find themselves pausing unexpectedly, standing in ordinary places, a street corner, a hallway, a quiet room. For a brief moment, the world feels thinner, as if something could appear. It never does, but the feeling remains. The town does not invite return. It does not promise revelation. It does not resolve anything. It exists briefly, without justification, then withdraws. Those who encounter it are left with no evidence, only an altered sense of presence. If the town were to be described accurately, it would not be as mysterious or unsettling. It would be described as complete, not perfect, not ideal, complete, nothing missing, nothing excess. A place where nothing asks to be more than it already is. Perhaps that is why it is difficult to remember. Perhaps that is why it does not remain. Human attention gravitates toward tension, toward absence, toward conflict. The town offers none of these. It offers existence without demand. And then it disappears. Over time, the town begins to function less as a memory and more as a reference point, not something recalled in detail, but something against which other experiences are quietly measured. Crowded places feel excessive. Bright interiors feel overexposed. Conversations feel hurried, even when they are not. People who have encountered the town often find themselves drawn to spaces that resemble it, even faintly. Empty parking structures at night, libraries during closing hours, train stations between schedules, places where activity has paused but not ended. They linger longer than necessary. They listen without expectation. They wait not for something specific, but for the possibility of reduction. Language changes subtly, not vocabulary, but pacing. Sentences become shorter. Pauses grow more frequent. There is less impulse to fill silence. Some report difficulty explaining this shift to others. When they try, the explanation feels excessive, as if the experience resists compression into narrative. The town does not translate well. It loses coherence when forced into meaning. There are reports, rare and inconsistent, of individuals encountering traces. Not the town itself, but something adjacent to it. A street that feels momentarily unfamiliar despite daily use. A building that appears flatter than expected, as though depth has been removed. A room that feels finished before anything happens inside it. These moments are brief. They pass without consequence, but they are recognizable to those who know. One account describes standing in an elevator that stopped between floors. The lights remained on. The doors stayed closed. No alarm sounded. For several minutes, nothing happened. The individual reported no panic, only a quiet sense of alignment, as if the pause itself was sufficient. When the elevator resumed movement, the feeling vanished completely. Another describes entering a hotel corridor late at night. Every door closed, carpet muffling sound completely. Lighting evenly spaced without shadow. For a moment, the corridor felt longer than it should have been, not physically, experientially. Then it returned to normal. These encounters do not lead back to the town. They do not accumulate. They do not form a pattern that can be pursued. They occur, and then they do not. Some individuals begin to question whether the town represents an absence rather than a place, an absence of narrative pressure, an absence of outcome, a space where nothing needs to be resolved. This interpretation resonates with those who felt relief rather than unease during their visit. The town did not offer answers. It removed questions. In this sense, the town is not mysterious. It is complete in a way that feels unfamiliar. Human environments are usually built towards something: productivity, exchange, progress. The town appears built toward nothing, and that may be what makes it difficult to sustain. No one has reported aging within the town. No one has noticed hunger increasing or fatigue deepening. Physical needs remain present but muted, as if the body understands that urgency is unnecessary. This is not comfort, it is neutrality. The town does not care whether you are rested. It does not care whether you stay. There are no rituals, no repeated behaviors, no signs of belief or tradition. Nothing suggests that the town was ever shaped by culture. If it was inhabited once, whatever governed that life has dissolved completely. What remains is structure without intention, form without function. Those who attempt to write about the town often abandon the effort, not because they forget, but because the writing feels dishonest. Language introduces emphasis. The town resists emphasis. Every attempt to dramatize it feels inaccurate. The town does not build toward a climax. It does not conclude. It simply ceases to be accessible. Some individuals keep journals anyway. The entries become sparse over time. Dates lose importance. Descriptions shorten. Eventually, the journals stop entirely, not because the experience has faded, but because recording it feels redundant. There is a recurring sentiment among those who encountered the town that it did not offer escape. It did not remove them from their lives. Instead, it revealed how much of ordinary life is constructed around momentum, deadlines, expectations, narratives of improvement. The town removes momentum. What remains is presence. Presence, however, is difficult to monetize, difficult to share, difficult to justify. The town provides no utility, no lesson, no transformation arc. It does not improve those who pass through it. It simply alters their tolerance for excess. Years later, some individuals report missing the town without wanting to return. They do not long for it. They do not search for it. They simply recognize its absence. like a reference point that clarified scale. If the town were permanent, it would lose its function. If it were accessible, it would become a destination. If it were named, it would become fixed. The town avoids all of these. It appears briefly, then withdraws completely. Perhaps the town exists only at the edge of attention, too focused, and it does not appear, too distracted, and it passes unnoticed. It requires a specific looseness, a moment where expectation relaxes just enough. The fog, in this sense, is not concealment, it is permission. Permission for details to dissolve, permission for hierarchy to flatten, permission for presence without direction. Those who encounter the town do not gain insight. They lose urgency. They do not become wiser. They become quieter. If the town has a function, it is this: to demonstrate that existence does not require narrative, that completeness does not depend on outcome, that a place can be finished without resolving anything. The town exists only briefly, only partially, only when conditions allow. It does not wait, it does not repeat itself, it does not explain. And then, without warning or transition, it stops being accessible. The fog lifts, the road resumes, the world regains depth, nothing remains, except the knowledge that something existed without needing to be remembered. After enough time has passed, the town stops being recalled as an event. It becomes a background adjustment, a quiet recalibration of scale. What once felt necessary begins to feel excessive. What once felt urgent begins to feel negotiable. This does not happen consciously. There is no decision involved. The shift occurs beneath attention, like posture slowly correcting itself without instruction. People who have been to the town often find themselves uncomfortable with explanations that arrive too quickly. They notice how readily meaning is assigned, how fast conclusions are drawn, how insistently everything is required to lead somewhere. This discomfort is mild, but persistent. In conversation, they pause more often, not because they lack something to say, but because silence no longer feels like failure. Silence feels intact, complete. Some report difficulty returning to environments designed entirely around stimulation. Screens feel louder than before. Notifications feel intrusive. Music, once comforting, sometimes feels like it is asking for too much attention. The town did not offer quiet as a feature. It offered quiet as a default. Attempts to describe this difference to others rarely succeed. Listeners search for metaphor, for symbolism, for psychological explanation. The speaker often stops midway, not out of frustration, but because the explanation feels unnecessary, as if the experience does not require validation. There is no indication that the town intends to be understood, no sign that it contains a message. It does not correct behavior. It does not instruct. It does not reward insight. Those who encounter it are not chosen. They are not tested. They are not transformed. They are simply present. The absence of intention is what unsettles many accounts. Human environments usually carry traces of desire. Someone wanted something. Someone planned something. Someone decided. The town feels as though it was never decided upon. It exists as a remainder, a consequence without a cause that can be identified. In rare cases, individuals report returning to the road years later without planning to, not searching, not hoping. They find themselves passing through the same region under ordinary circumstances. The fog may appear, or it may not. Most of the time, nothing happens. The town does not respond to familiarity. It does not recognize repetition. Those who wait for it to appear often miss it. Those who do not wait sometimes encounter it. This inconsistency frustrates any attempt at pattern recognition. The town does not reward attention. It tolerates it briefly, then withdraws. There are no stories of danger associated with the town, no reports of threat, no sense of hostility. This absence is notable. The town does not protect itself. It does not defend. It simply does not remain. Some accounts mention a faint sense of disappointment upon leaving. Not sadness, not loss. Disappointment without object, as if something neutral has ended, as if a condition briefly allowed has been revoked. The disappointment does not linger. It does not develop into longing. It fades naturally. What remains is a subtle distrust of intensity, a suspicion toward environments that insist on reaction. Years later, some individuals notice that they choose differently. They take longer routes. They leave earlier than necessary. They stop filling empty time. These choices do not feel deliberate. They feel aligned. The town never appears in dreams as a destination. It appears as atmosphere, as spacing, as the way light behaves when nothing demands it. No one has reported bringing anything back, not because it is forbidden, but because the idea does not occur. Objects in the town do not suggest ownership. They exist without attachment. They do not invite possession. The town does not create nostalgia. It does not idealize itself. It does not position itself as better. It simply exists under different conditions. This distinction matters. If the town were peaceful, it would be described as such. If it were eerie, that word would suffice, but neither applies. The town is neutral, and neutrality is difficult to narrate. Stories rely on imbalance, conflict, movement. The town provides none of these. It is resistant to storytelling not because it is complex, but because it is complete. Eventually, most people stop thinking about the town directly. They stop naming it, even internally. The memory does not vanish. It integrates, like a calibration setting that remains after adjustment. In this sense, the town does not need to be remembered. Its effect does not depend on recall. It persists indirectly, through change thresholds, through altered tolerance. The world does not become quieter. It becomes more obviously loud. The difference is subtle, but irreversible. There is no reason to believe the town is unique. It may appear in other forms, under other conditions. The fog may not always be literal. It may be exhaustion, transition, a pause imposed rather than chosen. What matters is not the town's location, but its timing. It appears when momentum loosens, when outcome becomes irrelevant, when attention softens enough to stop insisting. The town does not ask to be entered. It does not prevent entry. It appears briefly, then closes, not behind you, but around itself. Those who pass through it are not changed in visible ways. They do not speak differently. They do not behave unusually, but they carry a reference point that others do not share, a sense of what exists when nothing needs to happen. If the town were permanent, it would fail. If it were accessible, it would become consumed. Its disappearance is not a flaw. It is the condition of its existence. The fog lifts, the road resumes, the world returns to its usual density. Tasks regain urgency, noise reasserts itself, everything continues. Nothing is missing, except the certainty that everything must continue this way. The town exists only briefly, only incompletely, only when the world allows itself to loosen. Then it withdraws, unrecorded, unclaimed, unwritten.